Welcome back to another one of my videos. As always, I find these stories that I read to you from different subreddits on the Reddit website. And I always leave a link in the description. So that way, instead of watching gameplay through the video, you can read along if you would like to. That said, let's get into the video. At least that would keep them hydrated. For some strange reason, it also seemed to help me focus. I listened for any sign that this object was alive and or about to devour me. After a few moments, the sound I heard was my own breathing. I tentatively stuck out my foot and touched the object again. It was hard and unyielding. I reached out with my arm and also touched something solid. I felt around on it and bent down all the way to the floor. It was a wall. The rough texture and ridges told me it was made of concrete block. I reached as high as I could, even getting up on my tiptoes, trying to find anything useful. I explored the wall, feeling my way to the right until I reached a corner. As tempted as I was to turn and feel down this new wall, I knew it ended on the side of the room where the monster dwelled. I had no desire to approach that thing without light and a very deadly weapon. As much as my fingers had become my eyes, my ears became my sonar, staying tuned to any sound. To this point, there hadn't been much. That didn't last. There was a shuffling sound that made me freeze. It was followed by the sounds of scraping on the concrete floor. Its soft breathing had gotten deeper and steadier. I was getting up. I stood in my corner, not moving, barely breathing, as I heard one soft footstep after another, getting louder with each step. It was curious about the other side of the room. My side of the room. I had to focus not to give it a strong smell to follow. I hadn't used the bathroom in hours. Not that there was a bathroom in here that I knew of, but I would have used the other corner and then never returned to it until nature called again. As the monster continued across the room, I could hear sniffing. It was hunting for me. My nerves told me to run. My mind told me to stand still. My bladder didn't care as long as it was emptied soon. My footsteps continued to approach. There was no doubt it was searching for me, and it would find me. My mind ran through every option available in a blindingly dark room with a beast searching for its next meal that was slowly approaching. I hugged the wall and started toward the other side of the room. Common sense argued that if I had no idea if there was another creature on the far side of the room, but there seemed to be no choice. As we continued our silent dance, I pictured the creature passing by as I slid along the wall toward its side of the room. When we had both reached the halfway point, it suddenly stopped. I froze and held my breath as it sniffed the air. For a long moment, it was totally silent. It seemed to be holding its breath as well as if listening for me. I kept my eyes squeezed shut and focused on being totally still. My lungs were burning from holding my breath. I knew I would soon spew out the stale air and gulp in fresh. I always knew that would be the end of me. The creature would know if I was here, and it would use the sound to track me down and tear me to bloody shreds. The countdown had begun in my mind. It was a matter of seconds until my lungs gave out and I had to breathe the last breath. 10, 9, 8, 7. I heard a footstep. The creature was moving again. I held my hand over my mouth and slowly exhaled, then just as slowly inhaled. It was difficult to keep my oxygen-starved lungs from demanding more air, but I was able to catch up quietly without breathing so hard as to make noise. I continued on my perilous journey toward the unknown, carefully listening to the creature also continue its journey. As I reached the corner of my nemesis, fear gripped me as I stepped on something soft. I waited for an attack that never came. Slowly, I reached down to explore this newfound softness. It was hair, soft fur, the kind that an animal would shed. All my suspicions were now fact. There was an animal here. It wasn't just my imagination. My fear and anxiety were fully justified. As I made my revelation, I heard my nemesis reach the far wall and bump into it. It then began sniffing in earnest. It must have caught my scent. It knew I was real too. The sniffing was getting closer. I allowed myself a moment of panic before the realization that the only thing I could do was continue my course around the room. I made my way through the blanket of fur and headed for the far wall, feeling as I went for the one thing that may hold my potential rescue, a doorknob. So far, there had been no indication of a door whatsoever. I prayed that the unexplored wall would remedy that. I continued on this insane and deadly game of Ring Around the Rosie, stepping up my speed as much as possible while still staying silent. It's one thing to know you're being hunted. It's another thing altogether to ring the dinner bell by giving your position away. I was counting on it, becoming confused when it circled back to its own nest. I was still as dark as ever, and apparently this thing didn't have any better night vision than I did. I reached the far corner and hope surged through me that I would find a door. My escape seemed imminent. I stepped up my search, going faster along this wall, but also feeling as much of the surface as possible in search of the desired door. My hopes came crashing down when I reached the next corner without finding anything. It couldn't be. It had to be here. How else did this demon and I enter the room? My despair crushed me like a ton of bricks. There was nothing left to do. This thing would eventually catch me. There was no escape. In the middle of my pity party, I noticed something. The room was silent. I couldn't hear it sniffing. I couldn't hear it breathing. I had no idea where it was. I tried to keep my breathing under control as panic washed over me. There was nothing to do but wait. In the darkness, I felt something soft brush against me. It had found me. The subtle growl was no longer across the room. It was right here in front of me. I felt a river run down the inside of my pants as my bladder finally gave up the fight. A sharp claw ran across my throat. Not hard enough to cut, but enough to let me know I was about to die. I couldn't take it anymore. The darkness, the silence, the menace. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I screamed over and over. It wasn't even words, just primal sounds that escaped. Every wail as a baby, every cry of pain, every shriek of fright as I woke from a nightmare. I let them all out. The screams of my victims as they suffered at my hands, the screams of their families as the court sentenced me, the screams inside my mind in a cell alone thinking only of the unless. Suddenly the lights came on. I covered my eyes to ward off the brightness. As I slowly adjusted, I was able to look around the room. The creature was gone. I looked over at the well where I had walked through the fur, but there was none. I looked all around, but there were only blank walls. Where is it? I turned round and round, but it was gone. Had it ever really been here? A door opened and two large men dressed in white came in. "No," I screamed. "Don't come near. It'll get you." They marched across the room, oblivious to the danger, and picked me up. "It's time to go back to your room," one of the men said, picking me up under the shoulder. "The doc says you've had enough therapy for today." "Did you see it?" I said. They carried me out without answering. We came into a hallway that stretched forever. I tried to look back at the open door. "Don't let it out," I said. "You've got to keep it in." They didn't bother to look back, just continued down the hall. I turned and saw it peek its head out of the room. "No!" I screamed. They didn't stop, didn't slow, just picked me up off my feet, dangled off the floor until we reached a room. They unlocked it and set me on my bunk. "You should probably get cleaned up," one of the men said as I tried to get up, but he held me down. "You know how this goes." You stay on your bunk until we lock the door. The second man backed out of the room when the first man released me and followed him. I ran for the door. You don't understand. It's loose. It'll kill you all. They turned and walked away. No! I screamed at the tiny window in my door. I pounded on the door for a long time, but no one else came by. Maybe it had already gotten them. Maybe it would come to my door and peek in my window with blood dripping from its mouth. I stepped back from the door, feeling exhausted. I looked over at the tiny shower stall and did what they suggested. Everything was built into the wall. The shower, the sink, the table, the bed. There was nothing I could use to hurt myself or defend myself. After I took a shower and put on fresh clothes, I sat at my desk and wrote what had happened with the monster. When I was done, I laid down, hoping to be able to rest. At the appointed time, the lights went out. The darkness engulfed me. It devoured me like the thing I fear most. I lay there with my eyes open, waiting. In the black nothingness, I heard it. A soft growl. If you liked that video, then like the video. If you're going to bed soon, sweet dreams. And if you have a full day ahead of you, I hope it goes well. Thank you for taking your time to spend on watching one of my videos on my channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.